And so again, hello everyone, and welcome to our Sustainability in Sport webinar. Thank you for joining us. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, I'm Elaine Farquharson-Black. I'm a partner in Brodie's planning team, but better known to some for my international amateur golf career, and more recently in my role as the chair of Aberdeen Football Club's Community Trust. So sport therefore plays a pretty large part in my life, although current back problems have meant that I've been largely spectating rather than participating this summer. But what a fantastic summer of sport, we've had so far. We've had the Euros, we've had Wimbledon, the Open, the Olympics, still got the AIG Women's Open and the Paralympics to come. So I might just have to keep working from home a little bit longer. In previous sports themed webinars, we've looked at how to encourage more girls to play sport. We've discussed the mental aspects of achieving peak performance, so how you can be at your best when your best is needed, and how you can transfer that to the workplace. But today we're going to explore some of the issues around sustainability in sport. And it might not be the first sector that you think of when you think of climate emergency and climate change, but the people in the sports sector and the people involved in physical activity are affected by and can influence climate change in various ways. So, for example, if you think about extreme weather, disrupting international, national, or local events that we might watch, or preventing people from participating in sport themselves, or it might be because of the way we maintain our golf courses, we look after them, or our football pitches, or how we look after our sports stadia. All of that, has an impact on the climate. And those of us involved in playing sport or spectating also impact on climate change through the energy we consume by traveling to watch or to play sport, or through the equipment we use and the waste that we create when we are playing sport. And so in the next hour or so, we're going to explore some of the climate change and sustainability issues in sport at a local, national and international level, and maybe touch on how sporting organisations and individuals can adopt various sustainability practices while still enjoying sport and sporting events. And I'm thrilled we have a fabulous panel joining us today to share their thoughts and experiences. I'm delighted to welcome Melanie Woods, Professor Steve Petrie, and Libi Newell. Melanie is a GB Paralympian. We can see wearing her kit here, and in fact is just about to head to Paris for the Paralympics to compete in the 400, 800 and 1500 metre wheelchair events, having raced in Tokyo in the Paralympics in 2020 when she came fifth. And most recently, Melanie secured two fourth place finishes in the Para-Athletics World Championships in Japan. Steve is Centrica's Regional Director for Net Zero, with over 35 years of experience in the energy and construction sectors. He's also Vice Chair at Built Environment Smarter Transformation, an organisation which aims to transform the built environment through digital and decarbonisation solutions. And British Gas, which is under the Centrica umbrella, are proud partners of Team GB and Paralympics GB, and Scottish Gas has teamed up with Scottish Rugby and the Scottish Football Association to help local clubs reduce their carbon impact. And our third panellist, Libi, is Head of Corporate Sustainability within the Sustainable Golf Team at the R&A, the global governing body for golf. And with a background in conservation and a master's degree in ecotourism, Libi's worked in sustainability in sport over the past 12 years. And her previous experience includes being a key member of the sustainability teams at the London 2012 Olympic and Paralympic Games and Glasgow 2014 Commonwealth Games, as well as supporting a range of sporting organisations. So we have a definite Olympic theme today, and thank you to all our panellists for joining me, and I'm looking forward to a good wide-ranging discussion about sustainability issues. And I thought Melanie would maybe kick off before we kind of sort of dive right into the kind of topic itself, was really to talk a little bit about your backstory. Everybody, loves Olympians, Paralympians, so it's really interesting to know a little bit about your backstory and your Olympic journey so far.
Hi everyone. Hi everyone. My name obviously is Melanie, and as Elaine said, I am a Paralympic athlete. I compete in wheelchair racing. I do a number of distances, but I've not always been an athlete. It's fairly new, or feels fairly new to me. And I started about 5 years ago now, 4.5, 5 years ago when I had a life-changing injury. I was out cycling on the country roads, and unfortunately, a passing driver that completely didn't see me knocked me from behind and sent me flying off my bike. So that was obviously a huge change in my path in life. I was now looking what life would look like as a full-time wheelchair user. And after spending several months in hospital, recovering and figuring out how life would look, I quickly turned to sport and was looking for ways of kind of being active again. It was always really important to me. So I was like, what's sport going to look like for me now? And how can I be active? So I tried a number of things, but it was when I went along to my local athletics club and I saw the wheelchair racing athletes of all different abilities. Some were there just recreationally for the social, and some were, this is their full-time job. They were athletes looking forwards to the Paralympics and competing and representing Great Britain. So that excited me, and I thought that could be a possibility. So I have to say, at that point, I pretty much committed to seeing how good I could get. I gave a lot of time to it, and fortunately, COVID came along. I know that not many people put it like that, but for me, it gave me a lot of opportunity just to train and, really put time and energy into getting better. So yeah, committed, and by surprise was selected to go to Tokyo, which, yeah, it wasn't part of the plan, but was very much an opportunity to have experience at that level. And I guess the journey's just continued from there. I feel like going to Tokyo gave me the confidence that I could, in 3 years' time, be working towards Paris. And yeah, that's kind of what the last 3 years have looked like, has been getting experience and lining up against some of the best girls in the world to see how I can fare. So that sets me up for a really exciting Paris. And yeah, it's been a whirlwind of a journey, but something that I'm really enjoying.
And what does the training involve? Are you competing both, in Scotland, nationally, internationally? Tell us a little bit about that. Your job as an athlete, if you like, in terms of the travel that's involved in that.
Yeah, so a bit of a mixture. I train twice a day, and that can be outside on the track or in the gym, out on the cycle paths. And I guess throughout the year, as it is kind of year round, or we're summer season, so it kind of means that in the winter we try and get some travel in terms of getting some dry, warm weather that allows us to train outside and not be locked indoors all winter. And then when the competition season comes around, yeah, we're kind of traveling to different destinations to line up against international athletes in preparation for whatever championships is on during the summer.
And you mentioned, obviously, you were in Tokyo, and it was recorded as the hottest Olympics Games in history, with conditions described as torturous, as the temperatures rose to over 34 degrees and the humidity was 70%. Competitors were vomiting, fainting at the finish line. And I understand that 1 in 5 Paralympic athletes experienced at least one heat stress related symptom at the Tokyo Paralympics. Do you remember it being like that it was, just incredibly hot?
Yeah, we got a real mix of weather. I think a lot of our strategies were based around the heat and what we were going to be presented with in that sense, ice vests and everything that we could do to keep cool. And for a large part of it, it was very, very hot, we were trying to avoid the sun where we could. But then towards the end of the competition, we actually got a real flip in weather where we had almost like monsoon like rain. So it was the two very extremes, which was yeah, a kind of eye opener to the different climates that can and how quickly it can flip.
Yeah. And the Rings of Fire report, which has been published ahead of the Paris Games, they were actually anticipating, as I understand, that the Paris Games were going to be even hotter than Tokyo, because France had experienced very high, temperatures in 2023. It hasn't happened, but we have seen a delay for the rain and the impact that had on the water quality in the Seine, which fell below the required standards, and that impacted on the triathlon. So can you tell us a little bit about how extreme weather impacts, on you and other athletes, both in terms of training and competing? So again, looking at climate change from the athlete's point of view.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we're very much seeing that kind of, and it's become a huge consideration when we're planning the year, because we look at warm weather training camps, we look at getting away from the British weather, and then also a lot of the competitions are fixed within the calendar. So it's like, okay, which ones are going to be manageable and which ones are kind of not going to be in question anymore. I think we really saw that Dubai. We quite often do Dubai February time. That's a competition that we can almost guarantee we're going to get dry weather for and get some warm weather training. And we were hit with the massive storms across Dubai, which where I guess in the desert you think you're guaranteed some dry weather, and our competitions actually got cancelled for 2 of the days. So that was a real shock because that's somewhere that usually you're guaranteed the weather. So yeah, it just shows that it's changing across the world. And I think even in Scotland, we're seeing one of the kind of wettest summers we've had, and to get outside and train for us is so important for performance. But when it's wet, we push with rubber gloves on rubber push rims on our wheels, and it just is so slippy that yes, it can be done, but it's not the ideal.
Yeah. And you get, I suppose, the similar, that's you talking about the rain, but in extreme heat, when you get the kind of hands, I suppose even just like throwing things like the javelin and all that, and hold anything you've got to hold on to actually becomes quite difficult. And then regulating your own body temperature when you're in extreme, physical
Yeah, absolutely.
events as well. Yeah. So I'm going to come back and ask you a little bit more about sustainability at the Olympics, and the Paralympics itself and what that means. But I'm going to bring in Steve at this point, because as I said at the beginning, British Gas is partnering Team GB and the GB Paralympics for the Paris Games. So Steve, what does that partnership involve from a sustainability point of view? Why have you got behind Team GB and GB Paralympics?
I think in terms of the transition to net zero, I always say, and I know you've heard me say this before, Elaine, that this transition will happen one conversation at a time. It has to be specific to the person, the house, or the club and the facilities, etc. And I think sport in particular as a community has two main advantages. I think first is the community. The sport offers across all of the various disciplines one of the largest communities that we have in this country and in other countries across the world. So it's a huge community. And by the very nature of sport, the behaviours that people within that community have, they're very disciplined, they are competitive, they're enthusiastic, they're resilient, persistent. So the behaviours match with, the energy transition. And what we've done with Team GB and the British Olympic Association, British Paralympic Association, is we've put together a 5-year partnership which stretches from now up until the Los Angeles Games in 2028. And we've developed an existing arrangement and scheme that the Olympics had, and we've renamed it Get Set for Positive Energy. And the major, and I think the most exciting strand of this is the work that we do with schools. So over the next 5 years, we're aiming to reach up to 1 million young people in their schools. And I recently went to a school as part of this initiative near Glasgow in Uddingston. And we go into the school, we bring our engineers, our experts in energy and net zero, and we work with the pupils in small groups and encourage them to imagine or reimagine their school and think about how they could make the school more sustainable and all of the forms that brings in terms of energy consumption, how the building is lit, how the building is used, how they travel to school, what energy is used, how it's used, where it's used, why it's used, and by who. And that is continuing over the next 5 years. We also very recently ran a competition and invited schools to tell us how they would transform their school. And we quite recently held some judging panels and made the awards to the winner, the runner-up, and the second runner-up. The second thing that we're doing is that we are working with the actual Olympic and Paralympic athletes, and we've developed a pathways program to support former athletes to think about career options and career opportunities. And we hope that because of the behaviours, because these are elites. These are people who have reached the absolute top of their game in what they do. So I think it's win-win. We get some outstanding behaviours and commitment and disciplines, and the athletes have some opportunities that they possibly might not have thought about before the partnership was actually put in place.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'm, as you can imagine, I'm big in terms of using sport and all of those skills, as you say, transferring into the workplace. And I think you find that most women that are in C-suite, positions, have all had a sporting background. And you do it. It's all those things that you talked about, isn't it? Discipline, resilience, and all of that are fantastic. And that's great to hear, about the kids being involved. It did make me think of doing when I was from the planning point of view and designing a new town. And going into schools and asking them to design a new town, and it had a pet shop, and it has a joke factory, and it's got all of those things first, and then you have to go, yes, all the essentials. Then you have to go, well, how are you going to, flush the toilet? How are you going to heat? And then trying to get them to think, for those bits, kind of as well, and that's great, getting that mix between, as you say, the sport, and then making them think about the energy, kind of side of it as well. Now, I know you also support, Scottish Rugby and the SFA, and you're looking to help cut emissions by 50%, across the Scottish clubs, and you've been starting with the National Stadium at Murrayfield. How is that going? And, how can, local clubs, if there are people listening to this, that are a member of a local rugby club, how can they get involved?
Yeah, so the partnership, I'm very proud of the partnership. We all are, the partnership we've got with the Scottish Rugby Union, and it comes down to the people. The partnership, the true partnership we've developed with the Scottish Rugby Union team in every part of the organisation has just been outstanding. And there are 131 buildings that we are focusing on, including the National Stadium. So I'll start there. And we launched the partnership last July at Murrayfield in the dressing room. It's the only time I'll ever be in the dressing room at Murrayfield, I hasten to add.
I've been in it once.
Since then, we have been we have been to around 20 clubs. I'll start with the smaller clubs first and come back to Murrayfield. And what we do with the actual rugby clubs is we visit the rugby club with the club officials, with the events organizer, with coach, the players get involved, etc. And we understand how they are using energy, what energy, how, where, why, and who. And we understand what are their pain points. And it could be, and every club is different because they're all both at different stages. Some clubs are using too much electricity. Some clubs have got issues with heating. Other clubs have got issues with ventilation, with damp, etc., with the structure of the building. And we work with them to understand what problems are they trying to solve. And there's two real benefits to the club directly. One is to cut carbon, and the second is to save money, because every pound that is spent on energy is put directly back into sport, which is very important. So we work with the club to understand which problems they're looking to solve. And we put together a full retrofit plan. We carry out a retrofit survey, which is done by an architect and our engineers. And we make recommendations as to the improvements they can make to the energy system, the heating and hot water system, the fabric of the building. And we work with the club and hold their hand to make sure that they do the right things in the right order to get the outcomes that they need. And the real value to the club is that retrofit plan, that survey and plan, because they will work over the next few years. Because many of the things they have to do are expensive. It involves, in some cases, significant construction work as well as the conventional electrical, mechanical, electrical, etc. So we act as expert advisors, and we make sure that the things they do give them the outcomes that they need. In terms of the National Stadium, what we've been doing over the last year is we've set up monitoring equipment in the stadium so that we can monitor the plant rooms, how energy is consumed in the office spaces and the boiler rooms and all of the various function suites. And then we think and look at and monitor the lighting, the power, the heating and ventilation, how things like the shop, the kitchen, the pitchside sockets, the scoreboard, the lighting, etc., is being used. And we are, well advanced in putting together a plan for the stadium, which, for example, could involve things like using a air source heat pump to power the under-pitch heating. We've addressed the floodlighting and the scoreboard to make them as energy efficient as we could. And a big thing in stadia and in clubs is human behaviour. Not using energy when you actually don't have to. So it's really exciting. And the benefit we have as part of the work we do with clubs, we hold community road shows where we bring Centrica British Gas to the village hall or the club or the stadium. And people can then relate to how these improvements might actually relate to their own home. And because it's a social club in most cases, they can see the improvements being made. And I think from an educational point of view, it makes it real. It makes net zero real. Because otherwise it's quite an abstract concept. How do I reduce carbon? What do I do? Well, these clubs get the benefit of seeing firsthand what that involves.
And we talk a lot in planning and building things about the new buildings, but it actually is the retrofitting of our existing buildings that is the main challenge, isn't it?
It is
because the new buildings are actually a small, a very small percentage of the existing fabric. So, as you say, working on small things, starting with sports level, but they're then able to take that, as you say, home and say, well, think just even more about the energy. I don't know how many times I go in and switch lights off behind my kids and that kind of thing. So just even kind of the small parts. And so you're working with the local clubs and they can approach the British Gas to come and get that survey done, or
yes,
have they all already been done?
We've committed along with the SRU £2 million over the next 5 years. So every one of the 130 clubs is in the process of having a retrofit survey done. They will all get the expert advice, and based on the size of the club, etc., they will share that £2 million fund, which will start them on their journey towards net zero. In some cases, it depends on the clubhouse. It will take them significantly down the road. If it's a larger, more complex, older club, it will get them started. But the value is in the advice and making sure they do the right thing at the right time for the right reasons.
Yeah. So if we turn to golf, and obviously we've got golf clubhouses, but Libby, the R&A, you don't have stadia to transition to net zero, but you run championships at golf courses across the world. And I know that you're looking at how you can enhance and promote, biodiversity on golf courses to help tackle the global biodiversity loss. Can you tell us, first of all, about that project, to do with the golf courses, and whether it can be implemented, at local club level as well as championship courses? Because not everybody, we don't all play on championship courses, all of the time.
Yeah, I certainly don't, that's for sure. Yes, of course. Hi, everyone. We have this at the R&A, we have a fantastic biodiversity project, Golf in Nature, which is a 5-year study. We're focusing at the moment on championship courses in the UK, but is widening out globally and across other courses too. And what we're doing is looking at biodiversity, so wildlife and habitat surveys at 27 of our championship courses over 5 years. So we're surveying the courses. Our wonderful ecologists are surveying the courses every year so that we can understand the biodiversity that's on the courses. That means that we can manage so that we can enhance it. And when we're doing that, that means we can also then promote how golf is good for nature, and golf is supporting, as you mentioned, biodiversity. Well, not supporting loss, biodiversity gain, and tackling global biodiversity loss. We have a huge part to play in that. There's lots of different things that come up from the studies. One of them that I just love is it's about 55% of the average golf course is managed for nature, so not really managed at all. We kind of focus on the greens and the fairway, but there's all the bits to the side, the habitat that's there. I think it's 72% of UK bat species have been found on just those 27 courses that we have. 5 of the 7 different reptile species in the UK have been found on those 27 courses. We've got 3,000 courses in the UK alone. So, we're just looking at a very small part of what's a much bigger story. And then we're supporting the clubs to, how do you, once you understand it, how can you manage to enhance it? So we have biodiversity champions at each of those courses. And they are it's their role to champion biodiversity, to sort of consider and work with our ecologists and local wildlife experts on what is actually here and what do we need to. So at Royal Troon, they plant lots of kidney beech for the small blue butterfly. It's things like that. How can they actually support the wildlife that's there? There's, as part of the project, we also, just in June, we did the first Golf BioBlitz supported by the R&A Foundation. So for those who don't know, a BioBlitz is 24 hours where you just go, a group of you go and count in a certain area. So it was Carnoustie Golf Links. all the wildlife that you can and as many species as you can. So we had school groups coming down, we had families, we had experts, we had a lichen expert. I didn't even know that was a thing, but we had a lichen expert there who was helping us identify the lichen on the trees. It was absolutely fantastic. My wee kids got involved. Everyone loved it. And the conversations I had with people there, they're not golfers. Well, there were some members there as well who loved it too, but they were saying, I never thought a golf course would have this much biodiversity or this much interesting lichen or other things. The moths were incredible. And yeah, so we're doing all of that. We're developing a toolkit for those bioblitzes. So we'll have that available to courses to be able to use as well. So that, as you say, this isn't just about championship courses. We're able to use them as an example, but it's really important we show the value that golf courses have for communities and for the natural environment as well. So when we're thinking about what can there'll be some people on the call here who have clubs themselves. Scottish Golf have some amazing things that they're doing. They're working really closely with Geo Foundation for Sustainable Golf at the moment. So I'd thoroughly recommend having a look at their website and looking at the support that you can find there. And that looks not only just at the nature and biodiversity bit, but also the sort of the more carbon related stuff that I'm sure we'll talk about in a minute too.
That makes me think of my first event, my first golf event in North Scotland Girls. I was 9 years old. It was at Tarland. It was a 9-hole course in Aberdeenshire, and apparently I was more interested in the frogs that were on some of the greens than actually playing. So, and I see even that change in terms of more wildflowers, and not cutting back, leaving rough grass between tees to greens so that it's not so kind of manicured. And it actually is more fun to play as well, and to see when they leave those kind of areas. And certainly my home club's Deeside, and we have a biodiversity plan in terms of making sure that there are certain parts where you're encouraging the growth, and yeah, we've got all the kind of thing. But I've not done a BioBlitz. That might be quite an interesting thing.
I recommend it. It's great fun.
Doing a BioBlitz, that would be quite good. So in terms of, that's looking at the courses. If we turn to events, and I said at the beginning that we as athletes or spectators, we impact on climate change through traveling to compete, to watch. Not everything happens on our doorstep. So, would the best thing for the planet be that we no longer have, international, sporting events, that, we discourage people from traveling? Or is there a way that we can run sustainable championships so that we can continue to enjoy and to encourage, that side, the sporting side of it, but still looking after, the climate?
Yeah, and get that question a lot. You can't really have a sustainable event. Just don't host it. Don't have the Open anymore. Yeah. But I don't agree with that at all. The sporting event, sport is more than a carbon footprint. It's the social value, the well-being, the connections, the community involvement. All of that is all part of it. But we do have a responsibility to reduce our impact on that side of things where we can, and also I think we have a responsibility, which I'm sure we'll talk about more later, about using our platform to engage and inspire further change as well. But when we're thinking about sporting events, so we hosted the Open at Royal Troon recently, which was a fantastic event. If any of you got down there, hope you enjoyed it. We have at our championships a Green Links program for sustainable championships, which the RNA runs. And that looks at, it's not just around the carbon side, it's covering everything that we can. So we do have low carbon. So we're looking at our transport, like spectator transport, it's about 90% of the average event's carbon footprint. So how can we encourage and enable spectators to travel in a more sustainable way? So we more than double the public transport available, working with partners and that side of things. We have electric vehicles, hybrid park and ride buses. So we're doing what we can there. The Open has since 2021 been powered by biofuel and solar panels. So the biofuel we bring in that's reduced our carbon footprint in temporary energy by 90% compared to using diesel. So that's our kind of low carbon side of things. We're also transitioning toward a circular economy. So we're considering everything that we bring on site. So we have free water refill stations that are available since 2019 to all different audiences. So to players, spectators, media, volunteers. By using those, we've avoided the use of, I think it's over 500,000 plastic bottles now, which is incredible. We're doing research that shows that people interacting with that as well, with the bottles, when we sell affordable reusable bottles on site, they're then more likely to take reusable bottles to another event and out and about with them as well. So we're affecting that positive behaviour change through everything we're putting into that there. We went digital back in 2021. Over 600,000 A4 sheets of paper have been avoided by that move to digital ticketing as well. We run reuse projects. These are some of my favorite things. So we, at the end of the championship, we try to reuse as many materials as we can ourselves and within our contractors, but we do inevitably have some materials left over. So we started reuse projects with local, so each area that we're in with local groups. So there is a community garden just down the road from me just now at St Andrews, which is made from wood, nails, lined with branding from the 150th Open for the planters and the benches. They made a shed down at Liverpool from some of the wood as well, and we're getting to the local men's shed in Troons having a truckload of items delivered to them, which they'll be able to make into bird boxes, benches, things like that as well. So we're trying to, consider what we have in every different aspect. We've got the nature protection side as well. That's one of our key areas within the championship. Work with ecologists to, we're bringing 200,000 people onto a golf course, which I've just said how important they are in biodiversity. So it's really important to us to make sure, where's that grandstand going? Where can people walk? Where can they not? And Bob just keeps us right with all of that, which is wonderful. And then there's the social value side, which I think sometimes can be forgotten when we have these conversations. And we're also focused on the figures and the carbon footprint, which is very important. But we have 7,000 volunteers at the Open alone who are getting these social skills, employability skills, the well-being side of volunteering is very well documented. So we're looking into that more to understand it within our own events and how we can enhance it more ourselves too. We have a legacy fund where we support local sustainability projects within the local areas that we have the Open. And there's the economic impact. I think last year for the 151st at Liverpool was about 187 million in economic impact to the local area, and that's a concentrated. There's the social or the civic pride. And when you talk to people from various different venues, they're so proud of their town, quite rightly so. They're amazing places, and it's just lovely to be able to kind of be part of that and support it where we can as well. So there's all these things that we can do to make our events reduce certain impacts and increase the positive ones as well.
Yeah, and that's the bit you talked about. Obviously, you looking at the whole, the circular economy, but looking at the whole event, as you say, it's not just about traveling and going to see something. There are all the spin-offs and all the benefits that you get from taking part in sport, volunteering in sport, and volunteers are a huge part kind of sport.
Massive.
And that's similar, obviously, Steve, to what you were talking about in terms of your connection with Team GB and going into the schools and getting that kind of community aspect. Similarly with the rugby clubs, that's a big part of what you're doing, isn't it? It's similar, different sport, but similar.
Yeah, it is, and there are huge benefits, for the nation. I mean, one of the things that we've, as a nation, been wrestling with over the last 20, 30 years is a skill shortage, and the construction industry in particular, has got a significant problem with lack of skills, and it's not perceived by young people as a particularly glamorous industry to get involved in. It's not perceived as being particularly well paid, and it couldn't be further from the truth. It's the most glamorous industry I've ever worked in. And most young people don't know, that was a joke, most young people don't really understand what opportunities exist. And that's also very important. It gives us the opportunity to teach young people very early at primary school age, which is where I think we need to get to young people about what, job, career, education options are open to them. So that's absolutely critical. And if that work continues as it does all the way through their primary education, the secondary education, the college or university, then they're continually developing. So it's very important.
Yeah. So I'm going to bring you back, Melanie, back here now. Again, kind of let's go back to the Olympics. I'm not quite sure what's happening today, but it's been great because it's been on morning, afternoon, and night. It's been fantastic. What does sustainability look like for the GB team? Both in terms of your prep and out there. Tell us a little bit, maybe even just you using Tokyo, because I appreciate you've not been to Paris yet, but you'll have heard from some of your kind of teammates. How has sustainability, or how has Team GB used sustainable measures and the Olympics?
Yeah, I think we continue to see lots of changes, like the way the team approaches it and the kind of measures they take to improve what they do. A big one that gets a lot of media attention is the cardboard beds, and that was obviously something that worked well in Tokyo to save waste. They're actually comfier than you think they'd be. Yeah, and they held up pretty well. So hopefully it'll be the same in Paris. But yeah, I guess after the games there can be so much waste. So if they can limit, some parts or some aspects of that, then that's huge steps forwards. And a big one that we've seen this year is the kit. When the kit arrived, it wasn't all in individual plastic bags. That was taken away. We've also, I know the Olympic side did, but the Paralympic side have got rid of opening ceremony kit. A lot of us don't even make it to the opening ceremony just due to competition schedules. So it kind of seems silly to put it on for a picture and leave it behind. So we've just got our podium kit that we'll use if we do go to the opening ceremony, which makes a lot more sense. There's also only so much kit you can wear in 3 weeks. So, we don't need as much as we have got in previous games. And I think making any reductions in the waste that we have is a step forward. So I think we'll see a lot of steps, whether it's the transport around the village or, measures that have been taken to kind of reduce our impact. I think that's a good thing.
There's a question that's come in, and I don't know if you can answer this, but it's about the catering in the Games Village, and the organisers have said that 60% of the options will be meat-free in the interest of sustainability. And it's just a kind of question of what do you think about how does that align with, your standard, because obviously you're on a training diet and protein requirements and impact on performance. And again, was that something that you experienced at Tokyo?
So for me, I'm actually a plant-based athlete, so for me that is great news. I think in previous competitions, you can be really limited, so I think that's a huge step forward. I think it opens conversation as well amongst the athletes. I think we can get what we need from having more plants in our diet, so it's actually having that in front of us and having good quality options is huge for everyone, not just those who follow plant-based diet. So yeah, that's an exciting one for me. And yeah, I think it's a good step forward in terms of conversation as well.
Is that then another way we talked and Steve talked about, sports people being able to inspire, others, and obviously particularly with youngsters in that, but having, kind of a plant-based diet and still seeing that you're an athlete and you're able to perform at those levels, because everybody's about protein shakes and all about these kind of aspects. Is it, something there again that we've got that the, Olympians and others, athletes can actually lead the next generation and show that we don't need the meat diet that people perhaps
for sure. Yeah, and I think it doesn't need to be all or nothing. I think the more we encourage everyone to have more plants in their diet, it's definitely, a positive thing. Especially as you say, like all the training that we do, I think if anyone's going to need to look at meat to get what they need and or maybe struggle to get everything that they need from a plant-based diet, I think if athletes can do it, then we could all take that on board. So yeah, no, I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I hadn't actually seen anything about that's, and I hadn't thought of it from that side. I was more, kind of, I suppose, thinking about, as you say, in terms of travel. And I think you're going by train, aren't you, rather than flying, and that aspect as well to make, and sustainability, as you said, round the village with electric vehicles and that type of thing. I suppose let's look in more, I suppose, at the kind of individual sort of side, kind of we've talked a little bit about how we can, help use sport to help everybody in terms of sustainability. So I suppose each one of you, what would be your main thing that you might want somebody to do, or to change, or that you would want to see, or that you're intending to kind of inspire somebody to do, Melanie, in terms of that. So it's what collectively and as individuals would you say we should be doing, the most important thing that we should be doing to help go towards sustainability? So I'm going to come to Libby. I'm going to come to you first in terms of what would you like to see?
I might need to choose more than one thing.
Okay, you can have more than one. You can have more than one.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot. I think, like I mentioned before, the platform that we have through sport and as athletes and events is incredible, and using that to sort of walk the walk. So, like Melanie's a plant-based athlete, that's absolutely amazing. And then being able to say in the Olympics, so I think they've actually this year they've got some venues. It's not just for athletes. Some venues are purely plant-based. And it's one of the ways they've reduced their carbon footprint from half of Tokyo is by changing the catering offering. I think that's kind of going off topic, sorry.
No, that's
travel is a really big thing. Yeah, definitely. We do try to do the catering at the Open as well. Last year we had low carbon labels on the offering so people could make informed choices. So I think part of it for me is very much giving people the information so they can make a choice. So that we're showing people, if you travel by train, you cut your carbon footprint by about 67%, I think it was. Excuse me. 67%. So we're sort of giving them that information, so they're informed. We're enabling action to happen and hopefully inspiring them to do it as well. Transport's a really big one, as I was saying, for us. Like 90% of our carbon footprint from the overall event is on spectator travel. So that's a really big one for us to focus on. I think it's also kind of just trying new things. So we often get into a situation where we don't want to talk about it, or we don't want to try something because it might not be perfect or it might not go right. And sustainability is definitely an industry that things change. So something that people were doing 10 years ago going, oh, this is really sustainable. Oh, actually, we need to be really informed in what we're doing, and we need to constantly move forward with it as well, and not just rest on our laurels. Like I said, we're using biofuel and solar. We need to do more. That's done. We need to now move to the next stage and not just sit and wait for it. So constantly trying, and just the collective action, if we all do a couple of things, then it really makes a difference.
It's that sporting. I was going to say it's the sporting one, isn't it? 1%. It's the British cycling team. It was that 1% incremental gains. If everybody does everything 1% better, then
there you go.
You're going to
brilliant.
You're going to progress. So
yeah.
Steve, what would be your main suggested? I know you're more potentially on the fabrics, of the buildings, but is there something that you want to see or would be suggesting that we could all do?
I think there's two things. I think in terms of sport, there's two main things jump out. The first is sport has heroes, role models like Melanie, Jamie Fardale in the SRU, Finn Russell. People listen to their heroes and to their role models. So there's a role there. And the second thing that sport offers, I've mentioned before, is reach. It can reach a lot of people. When Murrayfield is full of 60,000 people, it's easy to communicate with them. It's easy in this digital age to communicate. So heroes and reach.
Yep. So, because we have a hero, Melanie, what's your main one in terms of, what you would like to see, or what you're kind of hoping to inspire other people to do from a sustainability point of view?
Yeah, I think for me, it's definitely conversation. I think a lot of athletes live in fear that, of the hypocrisy, or, I've already named a number of places that I've traveled this year. And, that makes me feel like, oh gosh, should I be part of this conversation? But I do think that doesn't mean it all goes out the window. If there's things you do that potentially, it's not stopping traveling altogether. It's like, okay, how can we look at ways that as a team we can travel in a more sustainable way, or, measures that we can take to try and reduce our impact. And I think having that conversation with athletes and, you know, in the media where there are people listening, and to get ears and eyes on that conversation, I think is like super important. So yeah, it's definitely not shying away from it, and just opening the floor up to, okay, how can we take steps to be more sustainable and reduce our impact, I guess.
I think one of the things we haven't really touched on, I suppose, is that reuse of equipment. We did mention, Libby, obviously from the open and reusing stuff, but even I suppose passing on you know, used equipment. So I know, you know, some golf clubs operate, you know, for the juniors, that they can cut, because juniors grow out of their equipment so quickly, that you can have a set, and you know, they effectively borrow them for a period and then move out and, you know, to the next one. Presumably that's some things that local sports clubs could do quite easily, you know, in terms of passing on kit.
Very much. And I think that not only is that good environmentally, it increases the accessibility of these sports. So you don't have to go and buy a whole set of golf clubs that, yeah, like the kids are going to grow out of in a couple of years as well. So we have golf at the RNA's first golf facility. You don't need to take any clubs there. You just hire them. You just use them there at the range. You can just get them when you go out on the 9-hole course as well. You know, it's about making sport more accessible so that we all get the benefits of it, as well as being more sustainable. It all goes hand in hand.
Yeah, yeah. I'm conscious I'm getting told by the referee that the final whistle is just about to be blown. That's been great, you know, and trying it back to the Olympics, I suppose, motto, you know, it seems to me it's clear that if we're going to get sustainability in sport, you know, we can do it faster, higher, and stronger together, which is the revised Olympics motto. And there's so many things, you know, that we've discussed there that are transferable, and that are, you know, that we can at individual level, as you say, at sports people, whether it's even, you know, your local four ball at the golf club, you go in one car, you know, instead of all going in four cars, and you know, coordinating it, you know, from that point. And as you say, in terms of looking at the biodiversity, and then looking at the fabric, you know, of the buildings as well, and what can we what can we do, and then, as you say, Melanie, in terms of, as you know, athletes ourselves, there's different ways that we can do it. So thank you all for your insights. That we could talk on various things for a long time, and maybe we should need to have part 2 of this. Melanie, we wish you the very best of luck, you know, in Paris, and it would be great actually if you could come back and talk about, you know, your experience in there. We'll be watching you, we'll be cheering you on, you know, in a sustainable way from our armchair. So thank you for taking time out of your training schedule, you know, as well. It's fantastic to, you know, have you, and say we wish you the very best of luck. I'm just looking.
Thank you very much.
One final question, just one final question before, was whether, how can sports organisations effectively integrate sustainability reporting into their operations, and what should the key metrics be? That's maybe one for you, Libby, just that final question.
Key metrics for sustainability reporting.
Yes.
Same for sport as everywhere. Excuse me, sorry. I believe in holistic sustainability, so looking across the social, environmental, the governance side of things as well. I think there's a few sport-specific frameworks. There's sustainability management systems for events, ISO 2012-1. There's a UN Sport for Climate Action framework, which is extremely strong as well. So there's various different things like that we can look at with consistency as an industry, so that we're all aiming together towards the same kind of goals and can support each other on that. I think is quite important. So yeah, all about the frameworks and the reporting and transparency within it.
Great. Thank you, the three of you all again. Thank you, everyone that's been listening, for joining us. I say thank you again, and thank you to our speakers, and enjoy the rest of your day.